The topic of the supernatural has long fascinated people, but perhaps no group has encountered it more directly and disturbingly than those who serve in war zones. Soldiers fighting on foreign soil are no strangers to fear, but often, it's not just the enemy they find themselves up against. Why these paranormal experiences seem so widespread during wartime remains open to debate. Some say it's the intense suffering and mass death that acts as a magnet for unexplainable phenomena. Others point to ancient cultural beliefs embedded in the lands where battles are fought. Regardless of the cause, the stories are strikingly consistent. Service members from one part of the world find themselves in a far-off country with its own traditions, legends, and otherworldly lore. And then suddenly, those legends aren't just stories anymore. For many of these soldiers, the line between myth and reality shatters. They see things they never believed in. And whether you're a skeptic or a believer, it's hard to ignore the testimony of those who've stared into the unknown. This is the smoke pit, and these are real accounts from U.S. service members stationed in Iraq. Tales of chilling encounters with what locals have long referred to as the jinn. Hey, did you see that? What's up, man? I just saw a kid. Scared the hell out of me. Where? He ran into that back room. I'm serious. Kid, come out of there right now. Don't make me come in there after. You. This eerie tale begins with a submission from a former U.S. Army soldier who went by the online handle at Black Jeep Convertible. His unit had been stationed inside a bombed-out, four-story shopping mall in Baghdad. Their job included pulling security duty inside the structure, alone. One specific room became infamous among the soldiers for its intense paranormal activity. Strange sounds would start around midnight. Faint rustling, shuffling footsteps, as if someone was pacing just behind you. And right around 3 a.m., the atmosphere would shift. Things would escalate fast. One night, a fellow soldier had a large black trash bag full of empty energy drink cans and plastic bottles sitting next to him. Suddenly, the bag launched into the air, scattering garbage across the room. He was so spooked that he hurled his chair across the space and begged another soldier to stay with him for the rest of the shift. Several soldiers reported seeing children dart into empty rooms that had only one way in or out. They'd rush after them, only to find nothing. No one was supposed to be in that mall except U.S. personnel, no civilians, and certainly not children. Another chilling encounter involved a soldier who said he froze in place after witnessing a ghostly, translucent Iraqi soldier walk up beside him and sit down. He was too terrified to move, even to glance in that direction, for the rest of his shift. The building's outer walls were riddled with bullet holes, the floors pockmarked from craters. They all figured many people had died there. But it wasn't until later that they learned the room with the most intense activity had once been a nightclub, a private torture chamber used by Saddam Hussein's sons. It was reportedly where they interrogated and killed victims, sometimes throwing their bodies off the roof. The storyteller's own most disturbing experience took place during his midnight to 4 a.m. shift. At first, it was the usual sounds. Soft footsteps behind him, the kind of thing you eventually grow numb to. But things escalated. Around 3 a.m., he heard and felt a whisper right by his ear, as if someone had leaned in within inches of his face. The voice spoke a warning, almost mocking him. "Don't mess with me," it hissed. "You know, I hate this stuff. I'll shoot." Instantly, he jumped to his feet, weapon raised, flashlight on, expecting a prank or a fellow soldier trying to scare him. But the room was empty. He swept through every adjacent room. Nothing. No one. Panicked. He cracked open an entire pack of glow sticks and scattered them across the space, hoping to light up every shadow. But the green luminescence only made the place feel more surreal, casting eerie shapes and distorting shadows. Now his mind played tricks on him. He swore he saw something move. Maybe. He finished the rest of the shift seated with his back to the window, staring into the room. He didn't care what was going on outside anymore, even if an enemy vehicle bomb rolled up. The ghosts, he admitted, scared him more. Another veteran, using the handle at Goody Tiger 57, replied to that story with his own experience. He'd also served at the same Baghdad mall. "The first day we arrived," he wrote, "we looked around and just said, this place is straight out of a horror movie. They were all young, most barely old enough to drink. So of course, the first thing they did was venture down into the pitch-black basement, flashlights in hand, nerves on edge. Despite being armed, the atmosphere made their skin crawl that he and a couple of others bailed early, citing too many horror movies as the reason. The last few guys claimed they saw something moving in the darkness. No one took them seriously at the time. That was the first month. No one went back down again. Another soldier recounted a chilling moment during guard duty one night. He and a fellow service member were manning the entrance to a small base located not far from the Iraq-Iran border. It was a lonely, blacked-out outpost, with a single light near the smoke pit casting dim illumination. That area had seen horrific battles. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, one of the highest casualty zones in the region, the entire base was surrounded by gravel, a way to reduce dust, but also something that made it impossible to walk quietly. It was 2 or 3 in the morning. The two soldiers were swapping ghost stories, including one about a local interpreter, who claimed to have seen a ghostly torso, an upper body without legs, glide right through a T-wall. Other stories involved cursed gear recovered during patrols at AS. They shared these unsettling tales. The soldiers heard it. Crunch, 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 footsteps, right on the gravel. Heading toward their Humvee, they scanned the darkness with their night vision gear. Nothing. Not a soul in sight. No movement. No sound other than the crunching gravel. Whatever it was had vanished. But they both had heard it. There was no denying it. It was yet another reminder that some places, especially those soaked in blood and tragedy, seemed to echo with more than just history. This next chilling account was submitted via email by a soldier named Tyler, who served with Bravo Company, 2 to 506 Infantry, 101st Airborne Division. He didn't specify whether he wanted to stay anonymous, so we'll leave his full name out. If he chooses, he can always speak up in the comments. Tyler and his unit were stationed at FOB Falcon in southern Baghdad, but often operated out of a much smaller, more remote outpost they nicknamed the Doghouse. This base was located down Route Senators, just off a road called Red Wings, southeast of their main station. The Doghouse itself had once been a known insurgent stronghold used for constructing improvised explosive devices before being overtaken by U.S. forces. The road leading to this site twisted and curved until it split into a Y intersection, with Jersey barriers blocking civilian traffic from entering. Tyler's vehicle would often be the last in the convoy, which meant he pulled rear security at night. A tense, nerve-wracking job in a place already filled with danger. At around 3 a.m. one night, Tyler was manning the turret on his Humvee, with his M240 Bravo machine gun ready. Using night vision goggles, he scanned the road. As his teammates backed the vehicles into position for a quick reaction force standby, that's when something strange caught his eye. Near the privacy wall of a nearby home, surrounded by low scrub brush, he spotted a figure. It was a boy, maybe 12 years old, standing unnaturally still, his head tilted downward as if staring at the dirt. What stunned Tyler was the way the boy seemed to glow. He radiated a soft, white aura, like a halo of light surrounded him. Curious and uneasy, Tyler lifted his goggles to get a clearer look, and the boy vanished. But when he flipped his night vision back down, the figure reappeared, still motionless in the same spot. As he continued to watch, something shifted. The boy suddenly looked up, locking eyes with Tyler. And then he smiled. That smile instantly turned Tyler's curiosity into dread. The boy's face began to distort, twisting unnaturally into a horrifying grimace. The only way Tyler could describe it was by referencing a scene from The Passion of the Christ, where Judas is tormented by demonic children, their faces warped and menacing. Then the boy moved. First walking, then jogging, and then sprinting. Straight toward the Humvee. In full panic, Tyler dropped into the turret, flipped off the safety on his weapon, and aimed. He braced to pull the trigger, and just at that moment, the other trucks finished maneuvering and switched on their headlights, flooding the road with white light. The sudden brightness blinded Tyler momentarily. When his vision adjusted, the boy was gone. The road was empty. He put the safety back on and slumped back into his seat. His medic, sitting below, heard him sigh and asked what had happened. "I think I'm losing my mind," Tyler muttered. That was only the beginning. For the next 3 nights, every time he slept, Tyler had recurring nightmares about the same boy. In his dreams, the child still glowed, but his face remained twisted, demonic, and unrelenting. But the story didn't end there. That a few days later, his unit was returning from an extended mission and heading back toward FOB Falcon. Tyler's vehicle was again in the convoy, this time positioned in the middle. As they moved down the road, something or someone caught his attention. Ahead, standing apart from a group of civilians, was a little girl. She was pressed against a privacy wall, alone, maybe 20 yards from the others. Something about her seemed off. As they got closer, Tyler realized two disturbing details. First, the girl's eyes were completely black, no whites, no pupils, just endless voids. And second, where she stood, there should have been nowhere to stand. A water canal ran alongside the wall, and yet she appeared to be hovering slightly above it. Suspended in the air, the Humvee passed a tree, blocking his view for a moment. He lost sight of her. By the time the vehicle cleared the tree, the girl had vanished. Tyler never found out if any of the other soldiers saw her. But as time passed, more members of his unit began to share stories of strange sightings. Otherworldly children, fleeting shadows, glowing figures. Eventually, Tyler came to believe something was wrong with that land, deeply, spiritually. The final story came from a medic who served in Iraq during 2006. Using the online alias at HaveDucky81, she openly admitted that some might doubt her story, and for a long time, she didn't talk about it. Not to fellow soldiers, not to her command, and not to anyone else. But she swears it happened. Her unit had been deployed to a region near Radwaniyah, about 77 miles southwest of Baghdad. One night, she was traveling with a convoy toward the capital, heading home on emergency leave after losing a family member. It was close to midnight. Her Humvee, the middle vehicle in a three-truck formation, had a driver, two other passengers, and a gunner on top. Because she'd been cleared for leave, she wasn't carrying her rifle. Without warning, the lead vehicle slammed on the brakes. Everyone tensed. An IED? A roadblock? But that wasn't it. The radio crackled. The lead driver said something had flown across the road. "What do you mean, flew?" came the reply. "I don't know, something huge. It wasn't a bird." And then they saw it in the desert beside the road. A massive shadowy shape emerged. It seemed bird-like at first, but wrong. Far too large, too unnatural. Smoke poured off its form. Dark, swirling smoke tinged with green and hints of blue. They tried to focus their night vision on it, but the haze made everything blurry. Then, out of nowhere, a rock the size of a human head smashed into the side of one of the trucks. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The rules of engagement meant they couldn't fire unless fired upon, and this didn't qualify. They grabbed a spotlight and shined it toward the creature. What happened next defied logic. The creature soared straight into the sky, vanishing upward in a blur of motion, and letting out a screech so loud and unnatural it sent shivers through everyone. Later, after arriving in Baghdad, an Iraqi translator asked what had happened. When they described it, his face went pale. "You saw an Ifrit," he said. "A winged jinn." The soldiers were stunned into silence. No one reported the incident. In 2006, even mentioning things like this could get you labeled as unstable, a career-killing accusation. But this wasn't the end for her. Years later, after returning home, the former medic married another veteran who, by chance, had also served in the same area. One day, he casually mentioned seeing something strange during a convoy, a massive bird-like shape flying across the highway near Radwaniyah. His story was nearly identical to hers. What made it worse was the feeling she had long after she returned home, that something had followed her. Not metaphorically, literally. In both of their next homes, strange occurrences continued. Whispers, shadows, cold spots. She couldn't shake the feeling that whatever she had encountered in Iraq had somehow come back with her, if the prior stories weren't strange enough. There was one final account shared during a podcast interview with another veteran, a recon Marine reflecting on an eerie event during one of his final training exercises. He explained that during recon school, a grueling phase of military preparation, sleep deprivation was common. At one point during their final evaluation, they'd been running on barely any rest for several days. Their unit was hiking through the remote hills near Camp Pendleton, moving in a staggered column along a steep trail. He remembered turning to check the man who was supposed to be behind him, his patrol partner, Choni. only to find him walking right beside him instead. That struck him as strange. The rule was always to maintain spacing, especially on hills like this. He nudged him and said, "Hey man, what are you doing? Get back into position. We'll get chewed out." But Choni didn't respond. He just kept walking. The veteran grew more frustrated, repeating himself, nudging the figure again. Still no reply. Then, suddenly, he heard Choni's voice, but not from beside him. It came from behind him. He turned, and there was the real Choni, exactly where he was supposed to be. Confused, the Marine quickly whipped his head back to where the figure had been just moments before, but no one was there. Just empty air and a few scattered shrubs along the hillside that he hadn't imagined the interaction. He was wide awake, had spoken directly to someone he saw, yet no trace remained of that other figure, the one who looked and walked just like his teammate. This day, he chalks it up to exhaustion, but the feeling of confusion and unease has never really left him. He admits something about that moment felt wrong, as if something had slipped into their world for just a few seconds and then vanished. These stories, as bizarre and haunting as they are, come from men and women who've served under extreme conditions. They are trained observers, often skeptical, practical, and not easily rattled. Yet these encounters, shared over years from multiple deployments and different regions of the Middle East, carry remarkable similarities. Children who appear out of nowhere and vanish into the shadows. Disembodied whispers in abandoned buildings. Glowing figures. Winged beasts. Black-eyed apparitions. Footsteps with no source. All described by people who were risking their lives in a war zone, and who openly admit that these paranormal moments scared them more than enemy fire. It's easy to attribute such tales to stress, fatigue, or hallucinations brought on by trauma. And yes, those explanations make sense in many cases. Sleep deprivation, constant danger, and the emotional weight of combat can distort perception. But what about the stories where multiple people witnessed the same thing at once? What about the accounts from different platoons, years apart, that tell eerily similar tales about the same base or the same road? At what point do we stop calling them just stories? The soldier who recounted the winged figure believed it may have followed her home. The one who saw the glowing child had nightmares for nights afterward, and saw other apparitions later that same week. In Hamlet, Shakespeare once wrote, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." 400 years later, that line still feels relevant, perhaps more than ever. The world is older than we can imagine. The battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan are not just recent war zones. They are ancient lands, layered with thousands of years of bloodshed, myths, curses, and unquiet spirits. Perhaps some echoes of that history linger, waiting for the next weary soul to see them. As veterans, these men and women were used to dealing with fear. But the fear they describe in these encounters is something different. Not fear of a sniper's bullet or a hidden IED, but fear of the unknown. Fear of something they couldn't fight, couldn't explain, and couldn't report without risking their reputation or sanity. And yet, they told their stories anyway. Because when you see something that shakes you to the core, it never really goes away. Whether it's the feeling of being watched at night, the whisper that shouldn't be there, or the figure who looks like your friend, until they vanish, these memories stay with you. These service members didn't seek attention. Most didn't even want to talk about what they saw. But something compelled them to share it. Maybe just the need to tell someone else, "Hey, I saw it too." For those who've walked through fire, carried weapons into hostile territory, and faced the worst of humanity, it's humbling to hear what truly frightened them. Not the war, but what came with it, or what was already there, long before any soldiers ever arrived.